Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And don't forget to check out that Swag Cave, the Resonance Branding Company Swag Cave. We got some new items up. That link is in the podcast description. A big thanks for tuning in, and I wish we were talking a little Victory Monday here, Packers fans, but nonetheless, it's another loss for the Packers at the hands of the Detroit Lions over at Lambeau Field here too. 3 wins in a row for the Lions in Green Bay, and this was a mind-boggling thing. I didn't find this out till Friday, but it was the first outdoor game for the Lions too this season. And you think with the weather elements and such, would it favor Green Bay? But this was another game where, not to take anything away from the Lions, but this was a game that Green Bay continued to shoot themselves in the foot. So let's look at the numbers here first. Jared Goff, 18 of 22, $145 for 145 yards passing, 1 touchdown. David Montgomery, 17 carries for 73 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 carries for 65 yards. You look at the offensive numbers and such, when you compare it to Green Bay, Jordan Love was 23 of 39 for 273 yards passing and 1 interception. Josh Jacobs, 13 carries for 95 yards. Green Bay outrushed Detroit, even though Detroit had 9 more carries, 32 carries for 124. Green Bay, 23 carries for 138. You'd think this is a recipe for maybe Green Bay winning the game, but that wasn't the case by any means. Pick 6 by Jordan Love before the half, which was kind of a backbreaker. I mean, about a minute or so left, a little less than a minute. He throws a pick 6. At that point, the Packers were down 10-3, and then it's 17-3 going into the half, and the Lions get the ball to begin, the second half, and then Green Bay's down 24-3 at that point, and it was just like snowballing after that. Don't need to break down this whole game again and kind of relive it here, but a few things I kind of want to hit up on this podcast. First of all, because later on this week we're going to do a podcast where, since we're about halfway through the season with the Packers having a bye and such, we'll do some grades and assessments and all that fun stuff here. But when I look at this game, it was more of just like an annoying, frustrating loss for me, because it was another example, another game where Green Bay just, again, I don't want to take away anything from the Lions. They shot themselves in the foot, and it almost felt like, I'll just come out and say it almost felt like the Packers lost this more than the Lions won it. And I hate saying that, because the Lions, outside of Brian Branch getting ejected, played a clean game. And even with Brian Branch getting ejected, it didn't faze them. Detroit played a clean game. Not as many mistakes as Green Bay, not as many boneheaded plays or drops or anything like that. And credit to the Lions, too, factoring in the weather and such. You look at Jared Goff's passing chart. I had to look this up, because it was after the game. I'm like, I don't remember Jared Goff throwing it to the sideline or throwing it that deep. And you look at his chart on Next Gen Stats. 2 throws to the boundaries, to the sidelines there. One was the 4th down touchdown pass at the beginning of the game to St. Brown. Another one was an incomplete to the right side. 2 throws over 20 yards. Everything else was 10 and under, and all at the middle of the field or wide receiver screens. There was 3 behind the line of scrimmage. There was 2 right at the line of scrimmage. Everything else was in the middle, attacking the middle of the field, getting the ball in space to his receivers, to his playmakers, instead of, going to the outside all the time, where the corners and that can use the boundary, the sideline as their help as a defender. Getting the ball out quick and getting the ball to his playmakers in space. It was a fantastic job by Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, and Jared Goff for executing that game plan. And I know there was a lot of Packers fans frustrated they couldn't get Jared Goff down. But when you look at it, Green Bay actually got to Jared Goff more than what Detroit got after Jordan Love. So Jared Goff was hit 4 times and sacked once. Still not great numbers. I'll give you that. Still not great numbers. But Jordan Love was hit 2 times and not sacked once. Green Bay, in fact, had 3 tackles for loss. Detroit only had 1 tackle for loss. And a big reason I think it was where I think a lot of people just felt like there was no pressure going after Jared Goff was because he was just getting the ball out quick. You look at that pass chart again. Like higher than 90% of his throws were less than 10 yards and over the middle of the field, getting the ball out quick, not allowing the Packers to get after him and get a lot of hits on him. Now, I'm not trying to exonerate the pass rush because that has definitely been an issue for Green Bay this year. But I think, just kind of using our eyes and seeing the numbers and seeing that Jared Goff was 18 of 22, if you come under the assumption that, man, we didn't get any pressure on him, we didn't get after him at all, the Packers didn't do anything, that doesn't tell the whole story. That's box score scouting. Now, Green Bay's got to do a better job of, maybe playing more man, maybe more aggressive in coverage. I know Jair and Evan Williams wasn't there, so that changes it a little bit. But to get those guys off their routes, they got to be more physical. They got to disrupt the timing. They got to close down that middle of the field, make Jared Goff hold on to the ball a little bit longer so you can get after the quarterback. Green Bay has to do a better job at that defensively for that. But Green Bay was really taken out of its game plan after that pick 6 from Jordan Love because they were having success running the football with Josh Jacobs. They were able to move that. And when you throw that pick 6, you go down 14-3 at the half, and you, 17-3 at the half, not 14-3, 17-3 at the half. You go down 2 touchdowns instead of just 1. It changes the game plan. It changes the complexity of the game after that. So it got them out of the rhythm there. But the other issue that has been with this team, and it's been with this team throughout this season, has been these stupid penalties, pre-snap penalties, false starts, holding, that derails this offense, that stops them from getting into a groove, that stops them from putting up points. And it continues to happen. That's, in my opinion, it's the question of, is it coaching? Is it player accountability? It's got to be both. Now, I don't think it's full-on coaching like some people think. But at some point, these coaches, they've got to hold these guys accountable. And I know you only got the guys who you could play with, but they've got to stop putting themselves – this offense has to stop holding themselves from the peak or the potential that they could be, because I feel like – and I think if you asked a lot of Packers fans, a lot of people, I think you would feel like this offense still has more. That it still has more potential, and it's just they're the ones that are holding themselves back. And that's what's so frustrating about this. And it's a different feeling, like years past after a loss. We're thinking, fire this guy. It's so emotional after a Monday loss where people are just mad and it's ruining their day or their week. This is a little bit different where I think it's just like, dang it, it's just kind of frustrating. It's not necessarily people are mad. They're just frustrated because we're seeing it, that this team has talent and they have potential. It's the team that's holding themselves back right now from reaching that, by doing stupid things. So stop doing stupid things. I know it's probably easier said than done, but it doesn't seem like they're just like these tasks that are so insurmountable that they can't fix them. They can fix it. They can stop holding. They can stop doing false starts and stop dropping the football. Okay, I don't want to hear any excuses that the ball was wet and that's why receivers were dropping the ball. No, Detroit didn't have a problem with that, and that's supposed to be a dome team, and that's supposed to be their first outdoor game. You would think Detroit would be the one that has the issues with that. Green Bay is having the issues with that. Not only this game, but they've had issues with it all season long. So I don't want to hear drops as an excuse. And then you look at the snaps. Those 3 fumbles, the low snaps, that could have been weather. I'll say that. But that derailed drives, and that's a dead play. You lose a down essentially after that. So, you add up all those things. you add up the penalties, you add up the drop balls, you add up the turnovers or the miscues, and you go up against probably the best team in the NFC, you're not going to beat them by doing all that. You're making it harder on yourself. Detroit, a team like Detroit, doesn't need extra help like that. They don't need that extra help, okay? And you don't need to make it harder on yourself by doing that stuff against a team against Detroit. You could get away with doing that stuff against lower level teams and that, but when it's one of the best teams in the entire league, you're making it harder on yourself to accomplish the goal at hand, and that's to win the ball game. But maybe, and I'm not a moral victory type of person, all things considered, all those issues that happened in that game, 24-14 loss. And I think that still goes back to the narrative or to the thought, to the notion that that's where it's frustrating for Packers fans, because we've seen it. We know this team is better. We know this team has talent. We know this team is a championship caliber team. And it's just frustrating when they're not playing to that level. Like, we've seen it. We know it. We know it can happen. And when it doesn't, and when they do stupid mistakes and they're holding themselves back from it, it's like, God, you're so close. You know, you're so close, and you want to reach that. You want to grab that. And they're just not quite there yet. They're not quite there yet. And it's been a problem, you know, the drops, the penalties, and all that. It's been a problem all season long. I don't know if that's something that they're going to be able to fix in just 1 week and during a bye week. I don't know. You know, the players, the coaches are all saying they got to fix it. They're going to work on it in a bye week. And that's typical coach-player speak. I don't know. Maybe that's just who they are this year. But I do know things can change in the second half of the season. Green Bay did it last year after starting 3-6, right? They made that run. They made it to the postseason. They were one of the hottest teams in the league. And maybe just a couple plays away, one play away from going to the NFC Championship last year. So they can get on this run here. No question about it. But I think if you were to make a list of things that this team has to work on getting better at during the bye week, our list would be the same as the coaching staff's. Penalties, knock it off. Drop passes, knock it off. Turnovers, knock it off. Now, Matt LaFleur said after the game he's getting annoyed by getting asked about Jordan Love's interceptions and such, and he's not concerned about Jordan's process. He's just concerned about the outcome, essentially. That's where I disagree with Matt. The process leads to the outcome. I think I understand what he was getting at. Like, he's talking about, his play, and he doesn't want Jordan Love to necessarily change his play and all that. And then, the outcomes obviously have to be different. But the process leads to the outcome. And the thing that he does have to get better at is situational football. Like Tom Brady was kind of talking about after the game, or during the game. Situational football. Knowing when to throw it away and living for another down. Knowing when to be aggressive. Yes, it's a thin line. It's a razor-thin line. We praise those great plays. Packers fans know it from the Favre. Patrick Mahomes does some of that stuff. We praise those type of plays. But it's a very thin line to be aggressive, super aggressive, and just being stupid with the football. Situational football. So that's part of the process that I disagree with Matt, where Jordan's got to get better. He's got to get better at that process. Then you get better at the process, it'll lead to lesser interceptions, lesser turnovers. So we know they got to clean up the penalties. We know they got to clean up the drop passes. We know they got to clean up turnovers and that. There's two other things that I want to see this Packers team work on during this bye week. Staying with the offense, red zone. 2020, they were the top team in the NFL in red zone efficiency. They were in like 76%. And in Matt LaFleur's first year, 2019, they were the second best. But since 2020, it has gone down big time. They are the fourth worst team in the NFL in red zone success. Why is it such a different, or why the big drop when you've got the same play caller? Now, there's one difference. Well, there's a couple, Aaron Rodgers and such, but Nathaniel Hackett, when he was the offensive coordinator there, he was apparently in charge of red zone, and that's when they would always call it the gold zone, because he was apparently he is a big fan of Austin Powers' Goldmember, the movie. So they called the red zone the gold zone. He leaves, and it's taken a little bit of a hit. Is that the reason why? Is it because Nathaniel Hackett's not there and he's not in charge of the red zone? It's Stenovich or whoever? I don't know. But they have got to get better in the red zone. There's no reason why they can't. You've got Josh Jacobs. You've got Tucker Kraft, a tight end that can be effective in there. You've got receivers like a Jaden Reed that could be effective in there, and Romeo Doubs, who's one of the best, strongest hands on the team. You got a tall target in Christian Watson. This team should 110% be better than what they are at the red zone. And when you're going up against this upcoming schedule, when you're going up against teams like Detroit and such, you can't get into a field goal game. You have to come away with touchdowns in the red zone. So they have to. They must. They have to get better in the red zone. And the other thing is defensively, for the most part, I think the defense has played well this year. Not perfect by any means. But there was points in that Lions game, too. It's like, man, I would really love a dominant middle linebacker that could stop the run. Or you could say that about the defensive line, too, so the running back's not always getting to the second and third level. But I think we need to see lesser playing time for Quay Walker at middle linebacker. I don't think he's a middle linebacker. I think he's better suited. He's got athletic traits beyond belief. He's got the tangibles, the physical traits to be a good linebacker, to be a good football player. I don't think that's at middle linebacker. We talked about it all offseason. It was like, okay, is he finally going to be maybe moved to weak side linebacker? Maybe even a little bit strong side. I think that move has to be made. I think Eric Wilson, I want that guy in. Now, I don't even know if Eric Wilson's the guy I want at middle linebacker the more I think about it, because he's been so good at coming off and getting after the quarterback. But I feel like they've got to make that change. Edgerrin Cooper needs more snaps. He's a defensive player of the week guy, and he's getting the third most percentage snaps at linebacker. Get the rookie on the field more. Eric Wilson deserves more snaps, but I don't think Quay Walker should be playing that middle linebacker anymore. So whether that's Quay Walker at weak side or strong side, and then Eric Wilson playing the middle linebacker, and Edgerrin Cooper playing the other way, those should be your three linebackers, but you got to switch it up. Quay Walker, to me, should not be playing middle linebacker anymore. I just don't think that fits his skill set. And if you want the most out of your former first-round pick, and you want to put him in a position to succeed, which in turn would put your team and your defense in a position to succeed, I think you got to make that change. You got to incorporate Wilson and Cooper more. Now, to be fair in that Lions game, those were your three leading linebackers in terms of play percentages. Quay Walker, though, had 100%. I think you got to adjust it a little bit and put him to either weak side or strong side and get him out of that middle linebacker role. We'll have plenty more to talk about with grades and assessments and changes, what we would do with the bye week. But to kind of wrap up this episode with this game against the Lions, it was just, again, it's a different feel. And I'm not trying to come off of as a moral victory type of thing. Yeah, we lost, but man, it was close. They did this, and if they weren't have been able to do that, they would have won. I don't want to come off as that. I don't want to come off as moral victories, because there's no place for moral victories for a team that has championship goals. It was just a frustrating loss because a lot of the same stuff that has been plaguing this team reared its ugly head again at home, and elements that you would think would favor your home team, and they weren't able to take advantage of that. They weren't able to get it done. So 6-3. At this point last year, they were 3-6. This is still a really good football team. We see the talent. We know the talent. We know the ability they have. I just feel like this team is what's holding themselves back to being a great team. They're a really good team. I think with their play right now, they are the ones that are holding themselves back from being one of those top-tier teams in the league, from being in a class with Detroit, from being in the class with Kansas City. It's them themselves, not anybody else. Them themselves. Not to take anything away from Minnesota and Detroit, who both picked up wins on the road, and that's a credit to those two teams for doing that. But I really believe Green Bay is a team that is holding themselves back from being a top-tier team. So stop doing stupid things and start playing better football. Because you just clean up a few of those things, you're a top-tier team. It's not insurmountable by any means. With that, that is going to do it for this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. A big thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to, if you could, follow and subscribe. And we would really appreciate some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify and some positive reviews on Apple, because that's how the internet gets it to other people. The more reviews, the better positive reviews and stars, more people find the Man Cave Podcast. Big thanks to our sponsors, Hy-Vee, Toyson Ford, and the Resonance branding company, Swag Cave. Again, that link is in the podcast description, and we've got more apparel in there too. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.